Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Rise. My name is Ryan Sullivan. On the far side, as always, Mr. J. DeMerit. And in the middle, we welcome in Kyle Wellwood. How you doing, good sir?
I'm great, thanks.
Yeah, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here. Now, before we dive into the career and the TMZ candids and all these things, we got to pay the bills, and then we will get right to it. So first off, of course, our good folks at Burrard Physiotherapy. The show would not be possible without those good folks. They do some fine work. You got manual therapy, IMS, laser, exercise, prescription. Whether you injured your back 10 years ago or 10 minutes ago, it doesn't matter. They got over 150 years combined experience. They do some fine work. You know you're in the right hands with the fine folks at Burrard Physiotherapy. And of course, speaking of Burrard, the fine folks at Burrard Roofing now present this.
Drip, drip, drip. Ladies, you don't have to sleep with that drip tonight. You know, that annoying drip in your home you just haven't gotten around to getting rid of? Burrard Roofing and Drainage can fix that annoying drip. For 40 years, Burrard Roofing and Drainage has been fixing roof leaks right down to the cause, guaranteed. Call Burrard Roofing and Drainage. Call 604-986-1812. Burrard Roofing and Drainage. We've got you covered.
Speaking of the fine folks at Burrard Roofing and Drainage, if you want to give that number a call at the bottom of the screen there, free estimates. I've been told to pepper in some free estimate chatter here and there. Speaking of the Burrard, let's get to the Burrard Hotel, and now this. Even two guys in green spandex sometimes need to break away from regular life.
And the Burrard has everything we need.
Space for hanging out.
Likes for exploring.
Sweet rooms for getting ready for the game.
And an amazing downtown location.
So book your Burrard breakaway now and we'll see you at the game. A stay at the Burrard makes heading to the game that much better. They're footsteps away from BC Place and Rogers Arena. If you want to go to the game, you want to have a couple pops, check out the Burrard Hotel. Find them at theburrard.com. Enter this promo code GREENMEN. Save yourself 15% off your next booking. And new to the show, we welcome in the fine folks from Botanica. Doing some fine work, the new Perfect Protein Elevated Anti-Inflammatory Blend. It's an organic plant protein blended with anti-inflammatory superfoods, including turmeric and ginger, plus 20 grams of fermented plant protein packed with natural vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, healthy fats, and fiber. Turmeric, it helps reduce inflammation. Huge for sports recovery. Coming off concussion like myself about a year ago, you want to have that nice anti-inflammatory stuff kick in, and it's nice to supplement a workout.
It's amazing, especially in like
stuff.
a smoothie world now, where like everyone just wakes up, and that's what I'm on a smoothie program every morning.
Yeah,
you get everything right in that box, right in there.
You got it all, man. You got your ginger, your turmeric, you got coconut, moringa. That's a nice word. You got everything going on.
Moringa is a superfood for sure.
Yeah,
it has to be.
It's good stuff. Speaking of superfood, also got to thank the fine folks at Red Truck Beer for keeping us hydrated. It makes the show that much better.
Most
sometimes.
important.
Yeah, exactly. So some fine folks at Red Truck. We do appreciate the support. Now that we're through paying the bills, welcome once again. It's so awesome to have in here from seeing you from the other side of the glass while we're in green suits for a while. It's nice to see you without the green shade going on. Now, why don't we talk about what we do with the Rise here, just to set it up for you, is we like to kind of go through the chronological timeline of the career, how you made it to where you were, what you had to go through to get to this point. You're a kid from Windsor, Ontario, the fine town of Windsor, home of the Spitfires, a team that you eventually make it over to. You start things out with the Belleville Bulls in the OHL. Make it over to Windsor, but let's rewind a little bit before that. Making the grade, getting to junior, coming up through hockey and minor hockey. When did things click for you that, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to be for a living?
Well, being small town Ontario kid, it was always hockey. So my father built ice rinks in the backyard. He's an engineer and he's very good at these things. So I was able to have ice a lot of the
Best
time.
ice, nothing but the
Yeah.
finest ice.
It was smooth every day. We had the hot water buckets on the night before, smooth ice in the morning. So I was very fortunate to develop hockey skills very early on, and same with my little brother. He made the NHL too. So both of us were able to get a lot of ice time early, and I think that's what really made the difference.
And your brother coaches now with Flint, is that right?
Yeah, he just got hired as a head coach. So
very nice.
As a 28-year-old, he's head coach in the OHL, which is pretty impressive. Yeah.
So, I mean, we always talk about what's vital to the progression of a young athlete is the support system. Now, growing up, I mean, obviously, it sounds like your dad's out there till 1 or 2 in the morning making sure the ice is fresh for you. But what was your support system like throughout minor hockey to kind of push you and keep you on track?
Yeah, it was a different time. I think minor hockey was just go out and have fun, and I think everybody played a lot of sports and hockey, street hockey, things like that outside. So I was growing up in Oldcastle, which is super small, and we had the ice rink, so everybody came over, and I had a lot of cousins around, older cousins, so we played all the sports. And you just become an athlete, and once you get through your minor hockey, you realize that there's sort of a bigger world out there full of junior teams and things like that. But I had no idea when I started out playing that, other than the NHL, what the popular teams were and so forth.
And I mean, as far as one of the other things we always like to touch on in the development stage is certain coaches or certain mentors that you had in your adolescence. So, obviously we all come, if you're fortunate enough to have a good parent structure, which it seems as you did, that show you that support. But what were some other good coaching things in your development that really stuck with you? Is there certain coaches and the ways that they helped with your development that really allowed you to understand that maybe you could make it?
Yeah, I would say the best coaches were, the NHL stars that I like to watch. I've never particularly liked teams. I only liked players like Lemieux, Mogilny, these type of skilled players. So I would consistently watch tapes of them, the VHS tapes, and then I would practice it outside. And by the time I was 5 and growing up, I was already very skilled compared to the other kids, and it sort of just coasted me through the junior ranks and until pro, and then you realize pro is a different game where it takes 10 times more.
Because we say that a lot to the kids too. Like when we're coaching youth and even in soccer, it's very similar. It's like, well, the kid usually likes, you say, who's your favorite player in the position you would like to play? And every one of them will have an answer. And then we'll ask the same thing, like, have you seen them? Like, what do you watch what they do? And if you watch for 90 minutes, that person and that person only, it's amazing how fast you can learn and how that does become a learning tool to kind of emulate something or someone. And that's really interesting you say that, because I don't think there's enough of that going on as far as, kids taking onus on not just like Ronaldo's free kick, but what does he do for the whole 90 minutes to stay at the top of that game, to, you know what I mean? Like all these types of things. So that's interesting that you were able to pick that up so early.
Yeah, and another thing is, another thing that can kind of maybe help spur that as well is, not to knock you, but throughout the majority of your career, 5'10", 180 pounds, you don't have the Malkin size going out there on the ice, and you don't have those kind of advantages that the taller, bigger guys do. And just, from playing hockey growing up sort of thing, I didn't hit my growth spurt till I was like 17 or so. Yeah. So I was the tiny one out there, trying to grind it out to get a look or get some minutes. And how was that for you growing up? When did the growth spurt kick in? And how was that grind against the bigger players out there?
Well, I think I had always had it because, like I said earlier, I had developed skills early on, so I was playing higher age groups for competition, and everybody was always bigger, and you sort of learn to deal with it over time. Certainly, you learn to use your teammates more, which once I got to junior, I always got the most skilled line mates and teammates because that's what would maximize the skills I had. So I think that led into pro where, when I started out, I got to play with, Matt Sundin and, Tucker and some other players that really needed, some skill to give them the puck a little more in better spots. So I think overall, it's definitely a negative to be smaller and not as strong. I tell people all the time, yeah, it's great, it's fine all the way through juniors and college, but once you get to the highest possible level, it's the skill differences are so close that strength and speed and reach and length become a big bonus.
Yeah. Speaking of the skill differential, so 2001, you lead the OHL in scoring. 2001, you're also drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is, I'm assuming, the hometown team for you, the go-to, which is pretty cool. But then, I mean, you go from OHL moving up to AHL, and what's the jump like that like in talent before we get to the bigs?
Well, I think the biggest jump is proving yourself at all the levels and with your teammates to give you that ice time and that opportunity where you're the one that's trying to get the goals and the assists and getting that best time on the ice. And when you play against men, everybody wants that opportunity. So you really have to show a special skill set to be the one taking that free kick each time. And, that's hard to do as you move up the levels.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about, as I knock over the set here, let's talk about that draft day for you. Going in there, I mean, taken in the 5th round, so I'm not sure if that's a still there in attendance or if that's a phone call thing. But what was that rush? What was that moment like for you to hear? And again, I'm assuming you were a Leafs fan growing up because everybody in Ontario, it's religion over there. But to get that phone call from that team, what was that jubilation like?
Well, it was one of the last years where you actually went, and it was in Florida, so everybody in my family, extended cousins and such, that wanted a vacation, wanted a party, went down there. So I had all older cousins, so everybody was 21 and up. So it was a fun time. And the first days, I think it's the first 2 rounds or something, first 3.
Now, do you have any idea where you're going to go? Like, do teams kind of say, okay, well, we might take you, but we're not going to take you till the 3rd round or whatever?
Lots of players did. I didn't. I only had one interview that I can remember, and that was the Leafs. So I don't think anybody was even looking at me. I didn't know that, certainly. I had led the OHL in scoring at such a young age in my draft year. And there was people with 1 point who got drafted before me. Yeah. And I had 118. I'm going, well, why is he better than me? At that age, you don't understand all the reasoning behind it. But to get drafted by Leafs was really nice because some of the family are, like you say, Ontario diehard Leafs fans.
Yeah.
So a few of my cousins were just in disbelief, and then we had a lot of Red Wings fans who were upset. But for me personally, I'd never been a fan of teams, so it wouldn't have mattered of any team. Yeah, I would have felt the same. Yeah.
So how old are you going into the player interview, like with the Leafs?
I think I was 17.
Okay, yeah. I remember I was 17 and I went into a job interview at Save On Foods, and I was like sweating bullets,
and you didn't
nervous
even
as
get
hell.
the job.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Yeah. You just got to push the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. But like I was dying of nerves. What's it like going in with the Toronto Maple Leafs with that interview? Like, what kind of questions do they ask you? How do you field those?
Well, it was just a player development guy who came to Belleville actually and interviewed me, and I think it might have even been Matt Stajan. I forget, but it was Cody McCormick, I think it was. So there was 2 guys who ended up making the NHL, and he interviewed us both, and I didn't think anything of it, but once another 4 months went by and then the real interview started where it's like come into the room, talk to 8 different people, and then I didn't get invited any. I was like, oh, maybe the rankings of where you're going to get drafted are right, and I'm out of the top 100, right? So, which ended up happening. I was, I think, 130 or 140th or something overall. So,
fair enough, not bad. So I mean, you're drafted. It's awesome. It's fantastic. You move up. You're in the AHL now, and everything kind of resets. Like what you did in junior and stuff. That's all for nothing now. You're in the AHL, grinding it out with everybody else. What's that like? I mean, are you are you rooting for everyone else there? Are you rooting for every other center in the lineup to get a call, or are you in the back of your mind kind of got a little bit of just you want to stand out that much more than everybody else?
It's hard to remember. I think you're friendly with everybody, but certainly you're dedicated to make an impact and play in the big leagues. So I certainly wanted to be the one with all the power play time, and I worked towards that, and I was able to get that, and I didn't think anything of it.
That's interesting you say that, because one of the things that we're always trying to do too is like, where's the mindset, and that for me is a great mindset as well. Is this kind of when you develop, it's like small manageable goals. So if that that was your first goal, is okay, power play time. That's when I can see the ice. Let's push for that. And then once you get that, then it starts to snowball from there. And I think that's always interesting, because most people think that they're just going to get off and start playing and start and score goals, and it's going to happen like that. And 9 times out of 10, that's not the way it goes. It's the other way. It's the how do I find ice time first, and then from there, how do you build? And that's always an interesting way that you can think about the mindset of small manageable goals, instead of managing let's go, score goals for Toronto. But right now I can control my ice time and start to get on that other path.
Yeah, I totally think so. I think because I was actually very good at faceoffs, and I played as a two-way center, but when I was drafted and what other people perceived of me was he could be good on the power play. So even if I was good on those things, it wasn't going to materialize in anything. And what they really wanted me for was the ability to play power play and play the skill guy. So that's what I really made sure I showed, so that I could, round out the game and show, he actually does that pretty well too. Yeah.
Nice. So 2003, you get called up World Junior Hockey Championships. You guys bring home the silver. What's that experience like for you? Because you go up, the AHL, and it's just AHL, NHL. It's another level. But World Junior Hockey Championships, you've got a handful of games to stretch your stuff as a country. You're putting on the country's sweater. What's that whole moment like for you?
Well, it was a ton of fun. I think just because of the age group, 18, 19-year-old kids, we were staying in a hotel all together on the same floor, room to room with each other. I think the walkway was through the mall in Halifax to the rink, and it was just fun. Everybody was excited. You get a lot of media attention that you're not normally exposed to, and the crowds in Halifax were outstanding. So it probably is the best place to have World Juniors is Halifax still, or Quebec. But those are the two that really sort of thrive on that sort of event. We'll see how Vancouver does this year when they host it. But those smaller towns really get behind that. Yeah.
You work all this way up. You're into the bigs. You're with Toronto for a few years. What's that pressure like? On my side of the media background, I always think it's funny when everyone says like, oh, Canadian hockey market, you just get grilled anywhere. But I feel like every market is different than Toronto. I feel like that's the epicenter of it all. What's it like going into the room, having to face 30 different microphones every night?
Toronto is definitely the epicenter, but it's not just the media and the games. It's the people within the 200-kilometer radius really love the Leafs, and they're diehards. So if you're in that area and you're a Leaf, you're going to get recognized, and people want to talk to you, take pictures. So it is a big deal and being from that area, all my cousins and extended family would also get asked for all these different things, right? Sure. So it was a totally different experience, especially being 20, 21 years old. I found it really challenging. Yeah.
Leafs had some ups and downs through the mid 2000s, let's say, but did that pressure get to you? And not just, I guess, media, but also fan pressure as well. Everybody expects the Leafs every year to walk out with the Stanley Cup, and that's not always the case by any means, and especially times that you were there and stuff. Things were all right before they got into the whole the majority of the Phil Kessel and all that stuff. And what was the pressure like over there compared to some other places that you got to play in?
I played a lot in Canada, so I played in Vancouver and Winnipeg. I think The pressure internally is about the same. I think everybody is working their hardest at that level. So everybody wants to make the playoffs. It becomes harder when you're not in the elite group of teams because of skill, and you're expected to be anyways, and everybody's working hard. But you just don't have Crosby and Malkin on the same team in Toronto. So.
All right, you come over to Vancouver or like Toronto Light, maybe. It's a version of it, but it's definitely on a smaller scale. Now, did you have any expectations when you came over to this side of the map? Did you know a lot about the city, stuff like that? Were you just like green to it all?
I had been here a few times, but I was pretty new to the city. It seemed fairly young. As far as compared to now, how everybody knows Vancouver, it seems, around the world. In Canada, you say Vancouver, but people, 15 years ago when I came, Vancouver wasn't really that, probably on par with the Halifax, or it wasn't in that echelon of elite cities, it didn't seem like. So, but my hockey game wasn't in a very good spot, hence leaving Toronto. I had 3 groin surgeries, then broke my leg, and I was in really bad shape, and so I moved to Vancouver as early as I could and just started training as hard as I could just to make the team that year. And I still got cut, but I think they had 2 injuries in the second game of the season. 2 centermen, DeMerit and Kessler, both got hurt in the same game. Yeah. So then they had to have me on the team. So
usually pretty good odds that Kessler would go down around the start of the year.
Yeah.
Usually what happens.
He's working too hard.
Yeah, but so I mean, let's talk about the rise from that. I mean, going through these surgeries, the broken leg. I mean, what's that training process like for you? I mean, all the while, you get ready for the new season and off-season training camp, all this stuff. But this is an entirely different beast for you now.
Yeah, I didn't handle it very well. I think, I'd never been injured before, and for me to hurt my groin, it was one of those things that, it's like a concussion, sort of. You just want to push through it, but you're just making it worse. And I systematically kept doing that, being a smaller player and usually having to just work through things and forget about your hurts and whatnot and just power through. I didn't work too well with the groin injury, so I had to have 3 different surgeries, and then I was just really down on myself and could notice in my play that I wasn't near the level I was. So I think that's the biggest challenge with the pro leagues, is that once you fall off your game, it's very hard to bring yourself back.
Yeah. Speaking of the concussions, and I asked this for personal reasons, what did you find after a while was the best rehab for something like that? Because it's like the question, like, how long is a rope sort of thing. Like, everyone has a different process. There's no exact science to it. What did you find was the best way to go?
Well, I think you need to be monitored constantly, day to day, and there's some good plans out there now, and people are actually trying to rewire your brain, doing different exercises in some institutes and things. So it's an evolving science. I work with a company called HeadCheck, and we monitor concussions, but the treatment side of it is really, really difficult. Yeah. And I get asked all the time in and around, like, still have symptoms after this many months, and what should I do? And it's not, and I'm certainly I'm not an expert on it, so I don't know.
You're not a doctor? What's going on here? Wait a second.
I don't know.
You came in that white coat, I thought.
Certainly the brain is not something I could even guess at. So
it's a delicate one. With the concussion stuff, I mean, obviously, there's no exact science to it, but when it comes to a broken leg or something of that, a little bit easier to rehab. Some prefer to do it near a swimming pool. I think you know where I'm going with this. There was a photo that came out, and Vancouver lost its mind, as we usually do, with anything in the newspaper about the Canucks and whatnot. You were rehabbing by a swimming pool, and I will let you tell the story from there.
I certainly wasn't rehabbing. I was reading a book.
You looked relaxed, anyhow.
What book was it?
Yeah, it was a fantasy novel of some sort. But yeah, a really interesting story. Because I was living in a small town called Tecumseh, and in our condo building, which is sort of off a golf course, not in any neighborhood where anybody should be around except for some seniors who are in the pool. We're just hanging out on, a regular weekday, and I'm reading a book with a broken leg, and somebody parked their car and came with this camera through the bushes and started snapping pictures, and everybody was pointing at him, wondering what he was doing, and we started to chat and realize, I think they were taking pictures of me. Yeah. And I didn't know why. And then the next morning I got up and there was, the front page of Vancouver and Toronto had a picture of me. So it was quite the surprise. I mean, I certainly wasn't an all-star. I was picked up on waivers or something. So
you weren't in like a metallic gold Speedo wearing it.
Yeah. No.
I think other reasons why they would want to get that candid shot of you.
Yeah. So it certainly wasn't a boon to my career. But yeah, everybody had a laugh. All my family, my buddies, I had a laugh about it. I still have a sense of humor about it. But certainly it was unexpected, and getting a job after that in pro sports, I think it was a challenge for sure.
Fair enough. Now there was another moment that went completely viral throughout your career as well, and we won't spend too much time on it because I understand it's a delicate topic. But you got smacked, I guess, in the face on a shift, and you came off, and it was just one of those moments where the camera's centered right on you, and you pull out your tooth and give it to the trainer. And this absolutely blew up because I remember there was like people would like show that clip and it would say like hockey player, and then it would show like basketball player and LeBron James just like flopping all over the court and pretending he's injured or something. What was that like for you? I mean, because I feel like there was a bit of it kind of went crazy on social media and stuff after that. And what's that moment like for you? Why don't we just say that? Because I don't know, for anyone else pulling out a tooth, while they're at work, and doesn't really fit, but as a hockey player, it's just kind of part of the job.
Yeah, it really is part of the culture. I think I had smacked at my teeth many times before, so a lot of them were broken, and you can't really get them fixed because they need to put a bar in your gums, and if you get hit again, it could shatter all your teeth, and there's all these reasons why you have to keep your teeth looking terrible. So it's like at that point, I already had 30 hours of dental work that needed to be done. So it was just adding another 3 hours. It felt like.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, I think I definitely recommend mouth guards for any kids playing hockey, because once you get hit once, you feel like it's okay to get them all knocked out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. It doesn't feel like anything anymore. But yeah, I can imagine anybody else who takes care of their teeth and they're in good shape. The first time you get hit, you're like, man, that's brutal, right?
Yeah. One day I'd like to compare X-rays with you, because like I've got so much. I look like I'm like 140 years old. Like there are so many glowing things in this mouth. It's ridiculous. The life of growing up in hockey, I suppose. But let's talk about those years in Vancouver before we move ahead to your move overseas. With the Canucks, I mean, what was your time here like? Do you look back on it fondly? The team was pretty good, but they weren't at that next echelon just yet. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you, aside from maybe the pool photo, made some pretty positive headlines here, and your face-off kick was always a talking point as well. What do you look back on Vancouver like?
I had a blast. I'm living here, so I had a great time. I think our team was full of skilled guys. So we had not only did we have Sundin and Sedin's, the Swedish guys, but we had Michael Samuelsson, who was my roommate, who's a skilled guy who won a cup in Detroit. We had Pavel Demitra, Burroughs, Kessler. We had a lot of high-end skilled players. So it was just a fun time to be a Canuck, and we ran into the Blackhawks both years in the playoffs, who were also an excellent team and ended up winning numerous cups. So it just we were knocking on the door and didn't get by the Blackhawks till the next season when they beat them in Game 7 there with the Burrows goal in the first round. So, they were a good team. It was tough.
Now I got to make sure I pronounce this right. Atlant Moscow Oblast. You played 1 year in the KHL. Just kind of go over that. I mean, there are so many mixed reviews that come out of the Continental Hockey League there. What was your time in Russia like?
A lot of the arenas are very nice. So I think, and you have to spend all your time there. If you're playing in that league, they're very much, it's a full-time job. It's not, okay, do your work and then go home and rest. It's sort of do your work and hang around and do some more work.
Yeah.
And why don't you practice skills and do this? So it's a little different culture. It's when you're in the thick of a sports season, you're just at the arena so much and you're just eating and sleeping that you don't notice it too much. But the travel was the hard part. So the travel is on planes all across Russia.
Yeah.
And a lot of these airports aren't certainly they're not much better than the worst small town one in Canada. It seems like they can be pretty rough, especially with de-icing the planes and the winter weather and things. So
right,
it felt like you were going to crash for sure, and which happened to DeMerit in the plane accident a couple months after I left. So I saw him over there, and then I remember the very last flight I was on. It was on New Year's, and we had New Year's on the plane because we were trapped on the tarmac because we couldn't fly out because it was icing too fast.
Okay.
They only had one de-icer who would try to de-ice the plane and then sweep at the same time and then de-ice. And we tried to take off 3 different times. And you're looking outside, and there's no other planes. There's no other workers. And there's
my God.
Please just stop. Please don't take off, right? And sure enough, we parked the plane, and they said, like, oh, you're not taking off tonight. We're like, okay, great. Let's go back to the hotel. No. We slept on the plane all together and waited.
That's real team bonding right there.
Yeah.
So it was, and they're small plane. It's not like we all lounger. It's me and him in a small Greyhound bus seat. So I was happy to move on for sure.
What was your what was your favorite part of Russian culture, and what was your favorite? Let's go with favorite meal. Favorite Russian meal.
I like that.
My favorite Russian meal was the borscht soup. All kinds of places went. If I try to have it here, doesn't taste very good. But for some reason over there, a nice hot soup. I think we were always coming in out of the cold, and it was the first thing I went for. So the Russian classic, I guess. Was,
that's a
classic.
classic.
But and all the people are super friendly there. I find them totally reasonable people and. They get along well with everybody, and they're very, very nice. Yeah.
Bit of a difference from playing in Toronto, where you're still getting all the photo requests and.
No, that's what I mean. Nobody bothers anybody over there in Russia. They're very much keep to yourself, say hi, but even in the locker room, you're expected when you show up to go up to each teammate and shake their hands and say hello, and that's something in North America. It's you maybe shake your teammate's hand once when you first met them, and you may not even have a real conversation with them ever again. But there, it's expected to connect with your teammate on his day and whatnot. So there's some real big positives over there. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So you come back, you have a cup of coffee with St. Louis, move over to the San Jose Sharks, and you play a year with the Sharks. You go to the playoffs. And what was that run like for you?
Well, that was the same year. So I left Moscow in January after that plane ride.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, right.
Yeah. So after the plane ride, I was like, for sure, I'm done, and and I moved back, and St. Louis claimed me, and then for some reason, European waiver rule, I had to get in it, and San Jose was out of the playoffs at that time for some reason, and claimed me. So I joined that team, and they had superstar lineup. We had Heatley, Marlowe, Thornton, Pavelski, Couture, Ryan Clough was great at that time, and pretty good D. So we were a really good team. So we ended up only losing 4 or 5 games for the rest of the season, and playing the Canucks
I didn't want to
on
say
their
it.
finals run in the conference finals. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was a sensitive topic or not, but
No,
the
no.
well, let's just talk. I mean, obviously in Vancouver, it's appealing to the viewers, but the puck goes off the stanchion, like the most random, ridiculous play ever. Bieksa shoots it. I think a little trigger happy on the confetti in the arena because nobody actually knew where that puck came from. But what was that moment like for you? Probably very sinking, I'm guessing.
Well, I think so many things happen. Those things are expected, so nobody really feels that bad because there's such a long series and there's so many different things. But actually, they had an ice. We were up in the game with a minute left in the third, and we shot the puck down the ice off the Canucks guy.
Yeah.
And thinking, okay, great, the game probably won, and the ref said it didn't go off and called it an icing. So we were all upset when it should have been an ice, and then they won the draw and ended up scoring to tie the game to even go in overtime.
Right.
So that was the break, and the reffing was really bad all series with the Canucks being so good at embellishing.
Oh, yeah.
Kessler, Burroughs,
Lapierre,
all those, even the BX, all the,
which in turn was their Achilles heel.
They were
Boston
they were so good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our Achilles heel, the only thing we weren't good at, we were probably better than the Canucks in a lot of areas. It was goaltending and our penalty kill.
Right.
We didn't have a penalty kill, and the Sedins just scored, each time on the power play, and then we'd go to the ref. Are you kidding? Like wanting to punch the ref in the head because it was an embellishment that led to the Sedins going and scoring an easy goal on us. And, we were on the refs so much that I think the very next series when they played Boston, the refs said, if you want to win, it's not going to be on our terms. And, it really bit them in the butt.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I remember like Marlowe got in a scrap. Like Mr. Gentleman out there, like you guys must have been just fuming on the bench for something like that to go on.
Yeah, we were. We did think, because we played the Canucks beforehand, and you sort of know who the best two teams were, and we only thought the Canucks were the team to beat to win the cup, and Boston was, although great, we could have beat them.
Yeah.
And same with the Canucks. We thought the Canucks would beat Boston, but after watching the game and seeing the refereeing change, we realized Tim Thomas, of course, was
stood on his head.
The main difference, but the other assist goes to the ref, I think.
Yeah.
Vancouver was a better team. It just
Fair enough. You round out the career in Winnipeg, actually before a quick stop in the Swiss League. But you go to Winnipeg. I mean, they're pretty new franchise once again, but obviously lots of history. And even though it's a smaller barn, from everything I've heard, it's one of the best places to be as a fan, let alone to play.
It is probably the best place for fans. I know there's like 1,000-kilometer radius around Winnipeg, Manitoba, where fans drive to the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they'll wait and get the tickets and then plan their weekends to come in. So it's a different center because there's so many farming communities in so many areas that are considered close to Winnipeg, even though they're 7-hour drive. They're like, okay, our time to go into Winnipeg, and we have to see the Jets. So you had fans that were just the best time of their year was coming to the game. And you don't get that in Toronto and Vancouver, where somebody asks them 10 minutes before if they want to go to the game. They're like, maybe, okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
It's all the people who like highlight their calendar for the game. So it was an incredible place to play. It still is probably the best home rink to skate in front of.
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot to that. I mean, we were talking about like Halifax and stuff earlier too, and through Jay's rise up into the Premier League and stuff, playing in front of those small towns. Even though, I mean, it's not the giant, sexy market that Toronto or Vancouver is or something like that, but I feel like it kind of adds to it. Like it kind of adds to the mentality. You got to protect this house because you're all kind of, it's just like it's a community level kind of team. It feels
it doesn't become like it's the city team. It becomes the province's team.
Yeah,
It's
like
just
something you're a part of.
Just like I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, so very much like the Winnipeg-esque type people, and it's same as like Green Bay is the place where the stadium is, but Wisconsin is the Packers team.
Yeah.
Like they will they'll drive 4 hours one way just to get to Lambeau for Sunday morning at 8 a.m. so they can start their tailgate. And again, it's all planned and it's all built into that kind of long history of kind of blue collar culture, I like to call it. But yeah, it's always interesting to be a player in those cultures. You know, as a fan, it's nice to be one side of it, but as the player, like I feel like, and you can probably answer this too, but like you just feel more of an appreciation for what you do and who you are, and they kind of divulge into more of that. Did you find that in Winnipeg?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Green Bay's a great example, and some of the Premier League teams in Europe and England are like that too, where you know that's their team, and you know just like the Riders in Saskatchewan, it's just that's what's on this calendar. It doesn't matter where you work, who you know, they're going to talk about that, and they're happy about all the players on the team and that the team's there, and they're supportive of all the guys, and they follow all the guys. So that's what's cool. If you're not the superstar like in San Jose or something like that, they're still going to know everything about you.
Yeah. Speaking of sexy markets, my last question before we round things out with the little rise and shine rule. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this right. Evie Zug. Or Evie Zug, perhaps? Is it Zug? Okay.
Zug.
We're going to go with Zug.
For me, it's Zug.
Okay. So you make your way over to the Swiss League. I mean, again, a cup of coffee, 9 games. But what was that experience like for you?
Well, I think for me, I had spent a few years retiring. Probably starting even before
this
that
is the farewell
photo
tour.
where I was like, when I first hurt my groin, it was like a long stretch of grinding out. It was like downhill instead of uphill, where you know everything's going great, you're working hard, and then you have some injuries and some other things happen, and life hits, and it becomes harder to be a pro. And even through San Jose, I was hoping to stay there. In Winnipeg, which is great, but it's still very cold, and maybe not my funnest place to live. Even though all the people are great.
Yeah,
we were in San Jose and Vancouver. Once you're West Coast, it's very hard to decide.
Living
to live
in Winnipeg
else.
is a hot destination. That's it's a
Especially
shocker.
in February.
Yeah, it's a shocker to me.
I would have been fine if I came from Ontario to Manitoba, but once you've lived in the West Coast, and my wife's from here, we were like, I don't think I can live anywhere else. And I was pretty much told my agent and other people, like, I'm retiring. They're like, no, you're 29, 28.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, no, I'm so done. and Zug was like the very last thing. So it was an old coach, and everybody told me, go play in Europe for a couple of years. You have to. It's great. Yeah. And I went over there, and I did my best to get engaged, but I wasn't. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, you know what? I do have one more before we get to the final rundown. Is that I mean, one of the big things, and you mentioned it earlier too, when you were in junior, that got you all that power play time and stuff, is you were a face-off guy, a face-off specialist, if you will, which I believe it says on LinkedIn to this day. But I always remember you had like the kick, so you'd block the other guy's stick from coming in. For kids out there that are taking face-offs, for myself on my beer league team, I'd love to know what was like the thought process approaching the squared circle before you went in there, and what goes through your mind? You're looking at how this guy's gonna hold his stick, and what's the thought process from beginning to finish of the drop of the puck?
Well, that move came across because I always played with left shot players who could one-time it. And because I was a right guy passing over to the side all the time, any left-hander who could shoot really well and one-time it, we were always a good combination. So I would stick my right foot in, and I'd pass it to a left-hand shot who would one-time it. So off face-offs, we would get goals that way and opportunities. So you ended up can use it at any dot. But so that's why it came about, and it worked really, really well. Obviously, there's a rule now you're not allowed to do it. But you had to watch who you're to do it against, because it would make guys really, really upset. And the second you would do it, they would either pull the back of your leg and you'd fall in the back of your head, or they'd slash the back of your ankle.
How many times did you take a butt end?
Yeah, or they'd hit you in the head on purpose. So you really picked your spots. Obviously, it's something you could do every time, but once you did it to somebody 4 or 5 times in a row, they were not. They were going to do something else. So it's to do it in your beer league. It would be the same thing. It would be like the guy would probably want to punch you. So I'd be careful.
That's fair.
Isn't that all what beer league's all about? Just guys punching each other.
Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, how we always finish the show is, we always have people on that have achieved the greatest amount of success, and one of the things we want to do on the Rise is always personify what that success means, but also how you get there. And we always try to finish with a couple rules. So, you as a person that developed into an NHL level player, what are some rules that you live by during your development as a pro, or now as just in general in life? What are some rules that you live by that have attributed to your successes?
Well, I think for me, since a young kid, I always tried to emulate or copy the people that I wanted to be like. So that's still what I do. If it's in business or in other areas, you take the baby steps you need to start to emulate what they're doing, and people start to recognize that, and you want to be in that club. So it takes these things, sacrifice these. Maybe you have to go back to school. Maybe you have to develop these skills to get the job. But, if you like what you're doing, those people that they see that you're emulating them and you want to be part of that community will also help you. So be open to being helped, trying to accomplish the same things they are.
Well said. Well
Great
said.
advice.
There you go, Mr. Kyle Wellwood. Thank you very much, my friend.
Cheers.
Thanks
for
for coming
having me.
by.
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, now if you want to learn more about the Rise and Shine Foundation, check this ad out, and we will see you later.
See ya. Sweet.
So we are sitting here at the future site of a really glamorous high-end facility called the Rise and Shine Retreat. Currently we are kind of bootstrapping it with some tents that we've set up to be glamorous campsites, aka glamping. They make perfect accommodation for kids who are joining us for Jay's captain's camps.
Well, I think for us, half of this is about the mentorship program. It's not actually about soccer. The sport is why we're all here. But the mentorship is truly about what skills can we present to these kids and really start to give them an idea of what other successful people are doing in this world. And we have fun little competitions, but we always try to walk them out in the mentor's shoes, because that's truly how these kids can learn.
So we feel it's really important to make sure that they are able to identify their other skills and strengths, and particularly passions. It's not just kids coming up and being coached by somebody in their particular sport. It's kids' eyes being open to the multitude of possibilities and potential for success beyond the field. The idea is to create well-rounded individuals through this program. And then the other side of it is, we have all of these athletes who have transitioned out of sport, or entrepreneurs who have moved on or changed their focus and transitioned out of whatever their career path had been. And it's cool to provide an opportunity for them to be part of it.
To see kids grow and to see kids actually participate in these kind of activities is truly, for me, the biggest benefit I get out of it all, because I could see them physically developing right in front of our eyes. We've been at the highest echelons of high performance, but we've also, we're normal people, we're relatable people, just like everybody else. And we have this rare ability to now create the platform to understand what that means, to support each other, to bring back community in not only in our kids, but as adults, and help each other.
I think that, when you achieve success as an athlete and you are so appreciative of all the people who put so much into it, it's only natural that you'd want to sort of turn around and share what you've learned and your experiences with the next generation.
We call it the Rise and Shine Retreat. That's what we're trying to create. We want people to come here in the health and wellness space and say, when I leave here, I'm going to be shining brighter. I'm going to understand what Rise and Shine means and the mentality behind it. We want to create a multifaceted facility. We want to be able to host weddings. We want to be able to host kids camps. We want to do fundraisers. We want to host community nights where people come and play sand soccer. We have the license and the space to really create our own lifestyle and bring people along with that in all of this health and wellness sphere that we feel so strongly about, and have a great crew that can help in those environments and create those atmospheres. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do here. We want to be unique. We want to set a new standard in how we should live and ultimately create a community that really cares for each other.